Okay guys, I have got to be honest with you. I had no idea what to do for content today. Absolutely zero tea, none. And Michaela was like, go find a tag to do. And I was like, I don't wanna. But remember the last time that I had no idea what I was gonna do and I said that to her and she had me do the try a chapter tag and it turned out really well? I think that this one is also gonna go really well because it has already inspired content that I really want to do with Michaela. But let's do the tag first and then we'll talk about it. So this is a brand new tag by the Bookaholic, and I have linked down below both the creator and the video for the original tag, so you can do it if you are interested as well. And it's called the Star Ratings tag. And this really called out to me because I have recently, or as of this year, been using the Storygraph app as well as Goodreads for my star ratings. And Goodreads infamously does not let you put half or like quarter star ratings on your books. But on Storygraph, you can do not just 3 or 4 stars, but you can do 3.25, 3.5, 3.75, and then 4. And of course, it goes through the rest of them. And it also asks you some questions when you rate books. And I find this super fascinating, and I can't wait to answer these questions because I feel like the Storygraph has totally changed how I rate books. But the first question is, based on what do you rate your books? And I have to say that for me, one of the best things that I rate them on is readability. And did I enjoy this book? If I really, really enjoyed it and it made me feel things, even if it isn't the best well-written book, I will give it 5 stars. And I know that I've definitely done that before, or if there's something about the book that has amazed me, I'll give it 5 stars, but I have gotten stingier with my high ratings as I've gone forward. A 4-star book is something that I recognize isn't at the level of a 5-star book, but I know it's better than 3. I'm really, really good at rating things 3 stars, which is, this book is fine, but it's not great. Like, I don't think I wasted my time reading it, but I'm not even sure if I'll remember it in a month. This has happened more and more and more with my romance novels that I've been reading. I think traditionally I tend to be oftentimes a more closer to 4-star rater. Now I'm hardcore much closer to 3. If it's a 2-star rating, it normally means that the book isn't terrible, but there was something while I was reading it that just kept clanging in the back of my mind. Like, I just gave like a 2.75 rating to The River of Teeth, which Michaela and I reviewed, and it literally lost that quarter star because I had like these questions that were just clanging in the back of my head the entire time I was reading it, and it really distracted me. So if that happens, it's 2-star. 1 star is honestly a rating that I give very rarely because if it's that bad, I'd rather just DNF it. I didn't used to DNF books very much in my life. I do that a lot more now. And yeah, life is too short and time is too precious and there are other things to read. So that's essentially what my ratings look like, discounting half stars. That's complicated. Question 2 is, do you give half-star ratings? And I've already outed myself on this one. I absolutely do. I do the whole gamut. I do the 0.25, 0.5, and 0.75. And this is where I think my ratings have gotten so much more nuanced as I've really been parsing through the books more, paying, I think, a little bit more attention to writing style when I rate a book. Like, yeah, maybe I would have rated this 4 stars on Goodreads, but on Storygraph, because it wasn't written quite as well as I expect my 4-star books to be written, it's like a 3.5 or something. So yeah, it makes, I can't wait to talk about this with Michaela. I could talk about adding those quarter and half-star ratings, just does so much, but there's a tag. So question 3 is, how long does it take you to give a book a star rating once you finish it? I do it immediately the second I finish a book because I read books so fast. If I don't log it on Goodreads and Storygraph like immediately, I might forget that I read it, or I might forget to do it. There are times when I've had to log an entire series at once because I forgot to do it, so I try to do it really fast. I will say that sometimes I feel like I put ratings on books that a week later I feel like I don't mean, or I want to change, but I often don't go back and change them. So I rate off my initial knee-jerk reaction, and if that changes, I don't always reflect that in my ratings. So question 4 is, do you ever feel bad giving a low star rating? I absolutely do. And I know some people will rate books that they DNF. I do not. I leave the stars blank and I just put it on a list that says DNF. And on Storygraph, it actually asks you to log at what % through the book you DNF'd it, which I think is really interesting, because I think it says something whether a person only made it like 5% of the way in, or they made it like 60% of the way in. In my Q2 wrap up, I mentioned a book that I actually made it about 50-60% of the way into before I DNF'd it, and it's a very different opinion. Like, did they just not like the writing, so they started it and then they were like, nah, not for me, and then they stopped it, or did something really massive happen? I don't often review those books though. I don't often put anything in the text boxes. Again, I don't want to drag anybody through the mud. And a book that I didn't like could be someone's favorite book of all time, because everything is written differently. There are all these different types of books for a reason, and I don't think that it's necessary to be mean about it. Unless I think that there is something in the book that people need to be warned about, or something like a trigger warning or something that happened that made me really uncomfortable. But that's rare. I can't even think of a book that I've really had that happen with. Oh, except for one history book last year that I DNF'd, and I DNF'd it because there were historical inaccuracies, and I made a comment about that because that drove me insane. Oh, 5 is, do you sometimes change star ratings? If yes, do you usually change it to a higher or lower rating? So I've already outed myself as someone who in my head might change star ratings, but I don't do it on my rating apps. But I'm really intrigued by this question. If yes, higher or lower? Because I feel like for me, I often have a knee-jerk reaction where I will rate a book higher, and then as I think about it, it might go lower in my head. But that's just with me. I have definitely had books, particularly bibliomancy for beginner books, which is the book club that Michaela and I used to do with friends, and may still do again sometime in the future, but we would read books, and when they weren't books that I had chosen, they were often books that for me are not naturally something that I enjoy, but I read them because they were for book club. And then I would be like, oh, I hate this book. But then I would go and we would film the book club episode, and I would realize that there were things to respect or understand in the book that, because I had been kind of resistant during the reading process, I hadn't taken in myself. So I have definitely come out of book club books thinking, okay, I rated this 3 stars, maybe it's 3.5, maybe it's 4, just based on like intellectual qualities or something that was explained to me that made me like just totally rethink what I had read. So that does not normally happen with books that I read on my own. So 6 is, what makes a book 5 stars to you? And I kind of already answered this question. And I think this is so ephemeral, because I have rated nonfiction books 5 stars because I came out of it and I felt like I had intellectually had my mind blown. Like, I thought about these things in different ways that I had never thought about them before. And so even if the writing was really dry, it still gets 5 stars. Because I'm like, wow, I have so much to chew on now that I've finished this book. I've also rated nonfiction books 5 stars that haven't taught me anything new because they were written in an engaging way, like King Richard by Michael Dobbs, which I talked about in my Q2 wrap-up. I knew everything that the book had to tell me, but it was so engagingly written and it was so unique that I had to give it 5 stars. Books that do things in a unique way will get higher ratings from me, for sure. But then with romance novels, I sometimes take writing quality into account, but if someone has written a romance novel, or really even a YA novel that does things differently enough that it makes me feel things, even if it's trotting over tropes or cliches, I'll give it 5 stars, because if they have managed to write it in such a way that it gives me an emotional response, I think that it deserves it. So I'm kind of all over the place. It's about how I feel. So 7 is what makes a book 1 star to you. Again, it's so rare that I will give a 1 star rating, because if it's not worth at least 2 stars, I don't think that it's worth my time. So maybe I've given some 1 star ratings in the past, because when I was younger and I didn't want to DNF a book, I feel like I read more bad books. But this year, I think the lowest rating I've given anything is 2 stars. Or I've DNF'd it, like I said. Because again, if it is a 1 star book, it's not worth my time. I have other things to read. So, also 1 star just kind of feels petty. I don't know. It feels like such a weird rating to me, personally. I don't know, is that weird? Do you rate things 1 star? I don't know. Explain what 1 star is supposed to mean. I don't know. So question 8 is to explain how your star rating system works. And I feel like I've kind of been doing that over the course of this video, but I do want to say more about how Storygraph has changed this. And I feel like when I couldn't do half or quarter star ratings like on Goodreads, rating books felt a little bit more like whatever. Like there would be books that I would rate 3 stars, and then I would look at all of the 3-star books and I was like, but that one was better than this one, but it wasn't a 4-star book. And I think it just kind of made me mad and a little bit frustrated that I didn't really feel like my ratings were reflecting the actual hierarchy of these books in my brain, because it was lumping together books that I felt like it didn't deserve to be lumped together. So now that I can do these half and quarter star ratings on Storygraph, I feel like my ratings and the way that I think about rating a book has gotten much more nuanced and also just better in general, because I feel like my ratings can more adequately reflect a group of books. And when Michaela and I did our mid-year book freakout tag, it asked some questions about ratings, and I was even surprised when I went into my Storygraph to see some books that I had grouped together, and it was just like, yes, this is just so much more interesting and truthful from me. So do I often know exactly why I give something like 0.25 versus 0.75? Not really. But when I look over the course of, I think I've read like 120 books by now, it's just more truthful and more realistic for the book. So if you're ever wondering how I rate things, there's a stark difference between what my Goodreads says and what my Storygraph says, and my Storygraph is where the truth lies. So if you are not already using Storygraph to log your reading, I highly recommend it. It is independently owned and not owned by Amazon. It is also owned by a woman of color. So it is just all of the good things. It also takes super feedback from actual readers. Goodreads has been ugly for a while, and Storygraph actively incorporates users' interests and things they want into building it. So if you haven't already used it, please start, because it has changed my entire life as far as star ratings go. And I can't wait to hopefully be able to do a live discuss video with Michaela more about this, because I think that it's a really good topic for it, and I always love to hear what she thinks. So look forward to that maybe sometime in the future, and we'll see you then. Thanks, guys. Bye.